Hi, I thought I'd share this little tip for free for you, something I learned yonks ago in my joinery days. If you need to cut folding wedges, cut the angle of your wedge into a sacrificial piece of timber, square across from this face, offer your timber up, wind your fence in till it just skims the edge of there, and then push him through, turn him around, push him through, turn him around and push him through, turn him around and push him through. So we've got a first little issue we got to get over. The 18 degree on the drawing, that's what I have initially set out to. So I've worked out the height of my wall plate that's going to be attached to the house, and I'll show you now what the problem is. It's not a massive problem, and it doesn't really matter because it just is what it is. So you probably can't see that, but there's a level line there, and that's the height of my wall plate that I've got to bolt to the house. But because it's wrapping round, the highest our finished roof can be is 100 mil. You need 100 mil upstand of lead, and that can go directly under that windowsill. But at the moment, we've literally only got, I've leveled it across and round, and it's only got 150 mil there. So another thing I forgot to mention, the most important thing when, you know, doing pictures of roofs is you need to check the manufacturer's spec on your roof finish, because they'll have a minimum pitch it can go to, and also roof windows. So the Veluxes can go down to 15 degrees, and I was quite surprised the tiles we're putting on actually go down to 12.5. So the tiles is fine, you've got loads of wiggle room there, but obviously the Velux needs to be steeper than that. So I've remarked now at 16 degrees, and we've actually gained probably about 120 millish, which is good. So that's plenty of room now. So now I'm going to rip down my wall plate material. Obviously it needs to be bigger than your normal rafter material, because you want this to be fully supported with no like rafter sticking below your wall plate. So if you measure that, what's that, 150? Always look down them because they're probably bent. So what I would do, rather than trying to straighten the timber, because it's a lot of work, I would just add 10 mil on that. So that'd be 160. Probably add 10 mil on the underside, so that's 170. And then when it's up there, if it's not straight, you can then ping a level line, string line, which will represent the actual top of your ridge. I found the limits of my new Milwaukee saw. It did not like this whatsoever, so I've had to get my table saw out. But yeah, I've ripped these down to 170. The overall length I needed was 7750, so it's gonna have to be out of 2 lengths. So I've divided it by 2, which was 3875, plus 170, which is the width of my timber. So I needed one at 3875 and one at 4045. Then I marked it out by, first of all, flushing the end of the board. Timbers are awful, again. Good job I put that extra 10 mil on. So yeah, flush the end of your boards. So obviously where the end of that lens, that gives you your shoulder line there. And then to mark that one, then we'll just slide that up and flush that off, and then strike that one through. So squared them all round now, same deal as before. Marked approximately half the thickness of the timber. One would be your A cut, so you take out this face, and then the other will be the B cut, so you take out the opposite face. So once you've done your A cut, then what you want to do is get a straight edge, and then save messing about measuring and stuff. I just get them flush on the top, and then put a pencil mark there, and then the bit that you can't see that's hiding now is the amount that you need to take out of the back side of this. Can you follow that? Yeah, that was quite straightforward, I thought. Yeah. So yeah, get them flush on the top, mark that there, and then take out below that pencil line. So once you've done that half lap, then it should look a little something like that. Yeah, my next job now is I'm going to pre-drill a 7 mil hole or so through this. So that'll be a clearance hole, and then once I'm up there, it'll just be a case of SDS, and then I'm going to get some 120 mil concrete screws then to fix it to the wall. Right, so that's my wall plate up in the air. I'm just fixing it now every 900 with these, you know, the concrete turbo screws, just until everything's framed up, and then it'll get bolted to the wall. If you're working on your own, it's handy to do this. Look, so from the top of where you need your wall plate to finish, measure down and put yourself a couple of ledges underneath, and then loose screw another piece of timber so that you can drop and slide in it, and then it can't fall off the wall then, because it just makes working on your own a whole lot easier. Just got to go along now fixing all of these, so I'll get on with that. So that's the wall plate all fixed to the wall now. Like I said, it'll get bolted eventually. What's important though, your plumb cut will only work right if you've got this timber plumb. Okay, so all I did was, as I'm going along fixing, I've cut a selection of timber wedges and then just knocked them in until it's kept that wall plate dead plumb. So that means when your rafters go up to it, they'll seat lovely and there won't be any gaps, you know. So yeah, the next job is to make ourselves a pattern rafter. So I'll get on with that and show you what I do. There's two ways you can do rafter templates, but I'm going to show you an easy one. Basically, that's where we want the top of our rafter to finish. Remember I said, because the timber was all over the place, I allowed 10 mil to come down. So that's the top of my rafter there. So there's 10 mil there. The maximum amount you can do your bird's mouth is a third of the width of the timber. So these are X 6-inch, so they're actually 145. So we'll go 45 to be safe. So our bird's mouth depth is going to be 45. So remember that. But if this was a straight timber and that was my rafter line, all you do is measure 45 mil down from the top of your dummy rafter and screw a batten on, and then, you know, when you slide that up and it rests on there and then rests on the wall plate, you can scribe your 45 bird's mouth in, and then the whole thing will drop down flush with the top. But seeing as we've got this extra 10 mil, because I'm working on my own, I want to do it the same method. But all that means is if I rest my timbers on the top of there, I've actually got to get 55 mil down, haven't I? So keep that in mind. So I need to go 55 mil down. So what I've done is I've measured 55 down from the top of my rafter. Then we've already got this angle, works perfect. We've already got the angle, it's 16 degrees. So I've done the same on the other side, so it like a shoe, so it rests when I slide that rafter up, it'll rest on top of there. But that's fine. But you must remember at this end then, this is roughly where my bird's mouth is going to start. If you rested that on the plate and then cut your bird's mouth, it would be wrong, wouldn't it? If you see what I mean. So in order to overcome that, I've screwed a 10 mil packer on the underside, so it's resting 10 mil higher on the plate. So then all I got to do is grab a 45 piece of wood and a 10 mil packer and just scribe the bird's mouth in situ. I'll show you when I'm up there, because that was quite confusing, but it's actually really simple. Right, so that is resting on there 55 mil above where we want to be, and that is sat on the 10 mil packer there. I got myself a block of wood, 10 mil packer and a pencil. All I probably will do here is, obviously the same applies here, but with a wall plate it's very difficult to get it level. So if I look, that is the highest point at the back edge. So what I would do then is literally just chuck my block on and my 10 mil packer in line with the back edge. And there you go. So I know now that that is the distance I need to cut out with my bird's mouth. Okay, that upright line represents the back edge of my wall plate. That's all we need now. So the height of our scribe and the back edge of our wall plate. So I'll show you how to do that now. Now you've got it back on the ground. So that's our 16-degree plumb cut, which I lined up with that's the back edge of our wall plate. You chuck him on like that then, and that marks your seat cut. So I just got to cut these out now. There's my bird's mouth cut now, and I'm just going to go and try him on. So I've just done my template now, so I just literally spiked it with a screw at the top of the bottom. This piece of timber is twisted to hell, but yeah, you can see our plumb cut's nice there, and then our bird's mouth is absolutely beautiful there, look. So I'm happy with that now. We've already checked the building is parallel at that end anyway. So what we'll do is we'll cut them all the same, depending on if that's kicking in or this is kicking in, because this could be bent as well, mind, this wall plate here. As long as we got two fixed ends, then we can either pack out this wall plate to straighten it up or move this. That's the beauty of not fixing your wall plate, is that perfect level is never going to change the level now, but we can still have a bit of left to right to straighten this wall plate out. I've started marking out. So first of all, I started with my Veluxes. Basically, this is having 3 Veluxes. So I thought the most aesthetically pleasing, so some people do it by slates or tiles to make it easier, but I'm more of a, what's the word, style over substance. I basically like to make it look nice, and if it makes it more complicated, then whatever. So I've gone center of the double doors, the bifold doors, center of that window opening, and then whatever the distance measured from the center of that window to the center of the double doors, that is what I've transferred onto this side. So you can see I've got my double there for a window. You've got to leave 60mm clearance, between 40 and 60mm clearance. So I go 60 just to be safe. So yeah, double joist there, double joist here, and then this is the position of the first rafter, which will it's just set in. Usually I do it by the width of my level so that I can, obviously your plasterboards will fix, but then you've got your dot and dab and everything to come out. So, and then, so from this space between there, I've just got to get it for a minimum of 400 centers. So I'll just divide that up after. So yeah, and that's how you mark your wall plate then. So I've got my first rafter timber. Before you do anything, take a look and see which way the crown is. So the crown's here, so I need to make this the top of my, so let's just mark that now, like that. So I know that's the top of my rafter. So obviously my plumb cut would need to be that way, wouldn't it? Because that's the longest point. And then you can like offer your template on and flush them up and all that, and then mark it off the template. Because this one's twisted to, look at that, twisted to hell, I think what I'm going to do, go off that point, so hook your tape on there, and then measure to the intersection of your bird's mouth, and I make that, I think it was 2946. I've just made a note of that measurement, 2946. So I'll just cut my plumb cut and probably do it that way, because yeah, I don't trust that bendy piece of wood. Blech. Right then, so far we've done setting out wall plate height, setting out parallel to the building, doing our half lap joints, making a rafter template, and now it's just a case of rinse and repeat now. From my template now, I just cut all the rafters exactly the same, because we've spent that time making sure everything's perfect. If I've missed anything, please just ask questions in the comments and I'll try and answer them. But I just wanted to point out a little thing. Before I used to use these, because everything needs metalwork now, obviously. And also this is a vaulted ceiling, so there's no collar ties to stop the spread of the roof, so you have to use metalwork. But previously I've used these adjustable joist hangers by, what are they called? Simpson Strong Ties. But they're really expensive. But I found another thing that works just as good, and it's better actually, and it's easier and quicker. So I'll show you what I've got. So we got these little things, and because of the quantity we bought, they're only like 70 something pence each, which I think is a bargain. And we got quite a lot of rafters, so it's a good job really. But yeah, basically, obviously, if you had a nice straight, I added the 10mm on the wall plate, but a nice straight wall plate, that would obviously finish flush with the top of your rafter, but ours is about here. So, but the way it hooks on to, so this nails onto the wall plate. You can set all these on your markings out ready, nailed, and just drop your rafters in and fix them. But what you will find is, because they've got rounded edges, it does hold it off your wall plate slightly. So what I do, because obviously we've worked out our bird's mouths now, so if you were just to put that on there like that, or like that in our case, this bit would be contacting the wall plate, but you'd have a big gap down here, wouldn't you? So all I've done is, here's my pencil, I've roughly gone 10mm, aren't we? 10mm below, and then mark a line about there, so you've got a bit of wiggle room, square that up like that. And then just, it doesn't matter if you take too much out because you'll never see it, but I'm just going to take about 3 mil out, maybe 3 mil out to there, and I'll just whack that with the chisel and then circular saw that little smidgy bit off the end there, and then it looks, when it's up, it looks like that. So that's notched in, and this is still making contact, fully making contact with the wall plate. And then on the other side, I haven't had to adjust anything because the bird's mouth is still tight on the back, and obviously truss clip goes on as well then. So yeah, that's what you are aiming for, because otherwise if I didn't do that, there'd be a big gap behind the back of that and it wouldn't look good, would it? So yeah, just be mindful of that if you're using these type of fixings. So yeah, I'm just going to crack on cutting rafters now. So I've just marked out my bottom wall plate at Eaves level, and I'll show you, if you're working on your own, an easier way of transferring that level up to the one up in the air attached to the house. So I'll show you that now. Our first rafter's fixed in position, so get your piece off a length of batten, butt it up to the first rafter, and then literally just transfer your marks and make sure you mark which side the joist sits. Otherwise you'll have angled rafters, wouldn't you? Go all the way along. So they're my doubles all the way along. And then when I get to the end, obviously this batten's shorter than the wall plate up there. So what I would do here, first of all, I would square all them across nice, so they're easy to see and transfer. And then on this one, I'd square that across, cut it, and then make sure you've marked the direction so you don't get confused. So you know that that batten this way needs to face over there. And then what I do is cut that square and then flip it over and butt this edge up to the last rafter I fit, and just carry on. Pretty easy really. And then you can just temporarily just screw the batten to your wall plate, and it's held there then, and you can just work along and transfer the marks onto the top. Okay, so as you can see now, I've got all my intermediate rafters in. I haven't done the doubles yet because we need a different, I think I explained, a different hanger. So that's supposed to be coming anytime now really. So what I've done is I don't know if you can see that, I've worked out the corner of the wall plate there, that obviously there's a drip bead on the render, so it's kicking out. So what I did is, where it became flat, I offered a piece of timber against the wall and plumbed down from the edge of the timber to make that corner there. Don't know if you can see it, about 50 mil in from the edge of that timber. What I did then, I measured it, the distance from there to there, and then I've measured the distance from there and put a mark there. So that's my last common rafter. And then, diddly end, what did I do? What did I say? Yeah, then I marked out my last two. Ignore that, that's not an X, that's my face mark. My last two rafters. Like I said before, I've swung my piece of batten round and I mark all my rafter positions. Oh, forgot to put an X there. X, so I know it's on that side. X, so I know it's on that side of the line, and I just got to transfer this now up onto there, and I can fit these last two common rafters, and job should be a good one. Oh, I've also, for the doubles, I've been cutting them this morning. I have to do them slightly different because it's a different style hanger, so I'll show you that when they turn up. Okay, right, so that's all the intermediate rafters fitted. My hangers for the doubles haven't turned up still, so I got two more of these to cut, so I'll do that and show you what I did just to allow for the hanger on the end, and hopefully it'll turn up by then. Yeah, so this is how I'm marking out the ones for the double hangers that are different to the others, because they wrap around the entire end of the timber, I believe. So what you've got to do, I'd like to have one here to test it, but measure it by having, so I'm just knocking off 2 mil off the overall length to allow for the metal on the end of the rafter. So my original measurement from top of plumb cut to top of plumb cut here was 2916. So instead of that, I'm going 2914 and then 2944, which is the measurement from the top of your plumb cut to where it intersects this plumb cut. That gives you your bird's mouth position. That's better. I'll mark it out now and show you. So that's my plumb cut mark from that original mark. And now, I don't know if you can see this, 2944 there, see? So I'll just put a pencil mark there, and then that is where I put my seat cut, start my seat cut from. So I've marked the intersection now. So now all I got to do, so this is for seat cuts, see? Mark seat cuts along this edge. So that's my position for my double ones. I mean, it might be a bit OTT, but if I was just to plunk a rafter hanger on the end of that and not do this, then at the back of your bird's mouth, where it goes over the wall plate, you'd have at least a 2 mil gap by there, see? So, I don't know, I'm just fussy. And if you're wondering why I'm doing it off measurements instead of using a template, because these, I'm not joking, these timbers are shocking. They're not just obviously crowned, they're also twisted as well. So I'm working on my own, and by the time you fanny about offering your template on your new piece to mark and got the best sort of fit, because they're all different and they don't sit flat on each other, by the time you've fannied about trying to line everything up, and even then it might not be perfectly accurate and everyone might end up being a bit different. So I've just decided to do them all off a measurement, because I know that that point there where it touches the top of my ridge wall plate, and that point there where it touches the top back edge of my eaves wall plate, it's going to be exactly the same on all of them. That's my logic behind that. It's just quicker for me to on my own. Maybe if you had 2 people and you could stand either end and tweak them about, then it might be better, but this is just easier for me and quicker. All right, still waiting for my hangers, so I'm temporary screwing these together. You've got to really, otherwise it'll be a nightmare to fit. But what you will need to do is clamp them together. I use my dead blow mallet to make sure they're flush. Some people like to do it flush on the top because they worry about any undulations in the roof covering, but personally I do them flush on the bottom, because there is going to be discrepancies. There always is. It's like these were done to exact same measurements, but obviously timbers are twisted different sizes, so and don't worry too much about a slight mil or so discrepancy on the bird mouth, because it will catch the one of them, and they're bolted together, so it doesn't really matter, because some of them turn out perfect, some of them have a step, but don't, overthink that too much. So yeah, you want to get them flush on the bottom, I say, because if you're the one boarding that underneath of the ceiling, this is vaulted ceiling, you ain't going to notice a couple of mil, on the slates above the roof when you're looking from the outside, because let's be honest, who spends hours looking at the outside of a roof? But you will spend time looking up at the ceiling, I'd imagine. And yeah, it can be a nightmare when you're boarding or cellotexing over the top of these, and it'll cause humps. So I like to get them perfectly flush on the bottom personally. It's entirely up to you what you do, but that's what I prefer. I temporarily clamp them together nice and strong, bang a couple of screws in there, do a couple in the middle and a couple just after the bird's mouth, just to pull them all tight together, because they're all twisted everywhere, and then eventually when they're fitted, they will have proper bolts put through. Well, my double joist hangers made an appearance over the weekend while I was away, so first job today is to get them nailed onto the end of the rafters and install the doubles. So these are them. When you're nailing these on, this is the bit that bends round and gets nailed there. So you need to get them sort of halfway on that. You see the end grain there, half and half, because when that folds, then that'll be nice and neat. Basically, you need to nail them into all these holes with the D-nails, the twisted D-nails. And usually, if I was plasterboarding straight onto this, because this steps, it's a good 2 mil, I would usually notch out a section of the underside of this so it finishes flush. But however, we're having 70 mil insulation, so 100 mil between the joist and 70 mil over the joist on the inside. So I thought, to be honest, it's probably easier to notch a bit of Celotex or PIR, whatever, out of the back of the insulation boards than fanny about notching all of these. I just want to get them up there now, so that's what I'm going to do. So I'll nail these on and then show you what they're like in situ and see if that extra few mil I deducted works out nice with the bird's mouth. I hope it does. I've just measured it without the nail in from the top of there to the bird's mouth, and we need to be 2946, and at the moment without the nail holding it off we are 2945, so I'm hoping it works out spot on. That's what they look like all nailed on. I just got 5 more to go. Right, so that's all my doubles in position now for the Veluxes. Next step I think I'll do is for the bottoms, instead of truss clips, because I can't get truss clips, I bought these twist straps. So I'll put one either side of the doubles. This twist actually fouls a little bit on the wall plate, so I'm going to have to let it in with a chisel slightly to get it to sit right, but that's no biggie. And to be honest, they kind of act like lateral restraint straps as well, don't they? So don't know if you can see that, but I've just nobbled a little slot with my 6mm chisel, and I just let that strap into there, it's nailed to the top, and then these will get screwed to the wall. Right, I've just bedded on this wall plate now. Didn't film it because it's the same drill as before. Packers underneath, chuck the bed on. It was wanting to bend, so I put weight on it for now until I get some weight with rafters on. So that's set in position. I've squared it up, so I'm pretty confident that's bang in the right place. And now our next job is, you see where that last rafter ends, a little bit twisted at the moment, so I'm gonna have to plumb it up proper, and then I'm gonna flush cut that bit that's jutting out off, and then that will be the start of my king common rafter. The king common rafter will come down here. If you imagine, it's still called a king common rafter. Imagine that, you just assume that's called your ridge, and then that's your king common down to just the other side of this steel here, just this side of the steel. Once we've got that set, that then can be used as our rafter template then to follow through there. While that's going off overnight, it's about 2 o'clock now, I'll probably get that rafter template done. And if you see, we're slightly higher than the bell bead, so I'm going to start chopping that bell bead off. So now when it comes to the king common now with this bastard hip, obviously if you did the bird's mouth the same dimension on the depth, your top of your rafters wouldn't line up, if you know what I mean. So what you've got to do, how do I explain this? What you've got to do is work out the height above plate of this roof, of the roof that I've already done. So to give you an example, so I've just measured from the top of wall plate on that plumb cut to the top of the rafter there, and it's 108mm, right? So that's the important measurement, the 108mm. We've got to achieve 108mm left after our bird's mouth on this part of the roof. Yeah, so what I'm going to do, in order to, it's simple, but we've got to establish, we don't know what that pitch is, do we? At all. So we can't mark out that 108mm above plate along our plumb cut on our rafter because we haven't established the plumb cut yet. And if you imagine, if your plumb cut's like that, and you measured 108 on it, it would be a completely different position if your plumb cut was like that and you measured 108 on it. Do you know what I mean? The bird's mouth will get smaller and smaller the steeper the angle gets. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut myself a height above block piece of timber, 108mm high, and set it flush with the back edge of my wall plate up there. Then all I need to do is sit a piece of timber on top of that height above wall plate block and touch it on the 10mm line on my wall plate that I've hold on, I've cut this flush now obviously, and that 10mm line represents the same line as this roof. So if I offer a piece of timber up, rest it on my height above block plate down there, flush with the back of that wall plate, rest a piece of timber on that, chuck my angle finder on my phone, and that will give me the pitch of the roof. So then I can set my plumb cut. I've measured the distance from that point to the start of the bird's mouth, so that's another process of an elimination out the way. Right, so I'm set up now. So what I did was I plumbed down from the outside edge of my ridge there down to this steel, and I measured the distance off the steel so that I know I'm square to the building, because this steel is square to the building. It was 59, so I've set my height above block plate 59mm to there from the edge of that steel. So now this back edge represents the top of our rafter, okay? So the underside of this piece of wood represents the top of our rafter, if you see what I mean. So at this end, I've just tacked a screw in. Don't know if you see that. Can you see my 10mm line when I slide that up? It is bang on the line. So now all we've got to do, clamp that on though, by the way, because it'll just topple over. Make sure it's not holding it off, which it's not. All I need to do now is chuck my angle finder on there on my phone and it'll give me the pitch. And then from the pitch, we get our plumb cut and seat cut set on the rafter square, adjustable rafter square. We know the distance from ridge to the bird's mouth, and we also know the height of the plate, so that should be able to cut our rafters template with that. Right, got our king common tacked on there, looking good. So I'm happy with that now. I've got my plumb cut set and obviously the seat cut, and so I'm just going to cut, I think it's 6 rafters I need for there. Cut them first, and then I'm going to start flattening this wall there where the bell bead is, so I can get my wall plate fixed there. So I thought I'd show you how I cut the rafters from those 3 dimensions I talked about. So we found the pitch. We know we need 108mm above wall plate to the top of our rafter, and we know the length of the rafter from the top of the plumb cut to the bird's mouth. So I'll just show you now. So I've started with doing my plumb cut. So what I do now is I'll hold my tape on 1672, which is the length of the rafter to bird's mouth. And what I'll do is I'll radius that line. So if you imagine, where is it? 1672 is there, and I will pull my tape now back and forth to strike that line. So now you've drawn your arc from the top. What you need to do then is remember that the 108mm height of a plate isn't like that. It's 108 on the plumb cut, okay? So what you do is get your tape and measure from this point, following that angle of the plumb cut until you intersect the line at 108mm. It's quite easy to go wrong here if you just measure straight down there, because you'll be in completely different positions. So that's where I think it is. So I've just done 2 little dashes there and there, and I'm just going to measure them now accurately with the tape. It's quite difficult with the roofing square, and make sure it's right. Right, so that's bob on really. So I can draw that plumb cut in now, and then my seat cut, and then start cutting. Another little thing now as well, now you've found that point there, I would square that round, obviously, take a measurement from the top of your rafter to there, and then make a note of that dimension. So all you have to do then is, rather than fanning about trying to measure that, you can just measure straight down, put a pencil line, and that's the start of your plumb cut on the bottom. I'm going to disc off this lead to there, because I can't take that off, because if it rains, it'll just end up in the house. And then I've got to flatten this wall so that my wall plate will run in to connect flush with the end of that ridge wall plate there. Here's the top of where my new wall plate's going to go. So it's all been chopped off, cut the lead off. I've stopped there because I need a bit of protection for the downstairs toilet there. So our next step, same drill as I showed you earlier, I'm going to start doing my wall plate. Obviously I can't go all the way through, so I'm just going to do it 2.9 meters just to the end of that lead, where that lead starts there, and I'm going to do a half lap on the end of it in preparation for the next piece to go on. So that's what I'm going to do. Obviously, what we got here, we have got about 60mm we need to get to the right positions, and this is going to have to be slightly bigger, because that's, I think I worked it out, I've got to rip it down at 185 this time, so it's fully seated on the wall plate. What I'll do is I'll probably just rip some, what is it, 60mm, so like some 15mm packers out of some, I don't know, old 4x2 or 3x2, and actually fix it to the back of the top and the back of the bottom of the wall plate, so I can then get it to the right depth, distance off the wall, and nice and straight down there. So that's my next move. I don't think I'll bother filming it, because I want to try and get this on today. I need to bed that wall plate on, but it's all the same process as what I've been showing you previously, so I don't think I need to repeat it, and I don't want to bore you and make it really long. So hopefully my next bit of footage will have this plate on, that plate on, and the rafters fitted. Fingers crossed. Thought I'd just chuck this little bit in. So yeah, got my wall plate temporary fixed with concrete screws. Can you see now there? That is beautiful, lining up with the other one. And don't forget, I've had to cut some 8mm packers, full packers on the top and the bottom. And don't forget, plumb that up, okay, because that's important. These are the rafters over the front, which is a steeper pitch. If you're wondering why they're so close together, it's not because I marked the Velux wrong, honestly. It is because... Why is that? Because... No, I'll admit I marked the Velux wrong. It all carried away, and I marked it out the same as these. Luckily, I was just about to fix the straps and everything onto the doubles, and my customer came out and said, Tom, you did remember that the Velux over there is a different size to the Velux over there, did you? I said, of course I did. I was just testing you, Andrew. Jesus. But as it stands, we've got a big steel in the way there, and that rafter, which is the last one on this side of the steel, to the double, was more than 400. So in my defense, it needed another rafter there. So I thought I'd just mirror it on there. Right, dudes. Well, all the common rafters are done now, up to where, as far as we can go. I know I said I was going to break this down into 2 episodes, but I think it's going to have to be more because I'm going to have to drop. I'm going to save the bastard hip till the very end. So in order to continue and finish the common rafters on the front of the house, I've got to cut the apex of the existing cloakroom front porch off. And I've got to lay a patio for my Staddlestone to sit on, and my green oak framework. That has to be made and erected, which will then form the continuation of the wall plate for my rafters to sit on, right to the end of the front of the elevation of the house. So I think we'll crack on with that.